So I'm now at power and language, and obviously this isn't the only time this is going to come up. It's going to come up and come up and come up, keep on coming up, and that's appropriate. After a time of being in Vietnam, Herr comes to believe, and his sense of this turns out to have been extraordinarily accurate, really, that command is lying to him. I mean, he gets this picture, and he gets us to get the picture. I mean, we get the sense that things are not as we are being told, and Americans and the world are not being told the way things are actually happening. And the biggest problem for Herr is that his colleagues have given this story their support. So they have joined basically the consensus, and they are supporting the consensus. And until that consensus breaks, and that's why Walter Cronkite's going to be so important. So let me just give you an image here. Here's old Uncle Walter. Seems the only realistic, if unsatisfactory, conclusion. This is 1968, and it's one of Cronkite's many, many hundreds of discussions of Vietnam. So you can see what I'm talking about. Here's a guy who just looks like he's going to tell you the truth. And when Cronkite says, we are losing this war, it looks like the war in Vietnam now cannot be won. This is why America's back is sort of broken, because they're like, the whole story turns out to have been bogus, all of it. Well, when did they start lying to us? And that's a good question. Because they worked in the news media for organizations that were ultimately reverential towards the institutions involved, the office of the president, the military, America at war, and most of all, the empty technology that characterized Vietnam on 2/14. So this is the problem. The people who are telling the story are deeply vested in saying that the story is going well. That is it, right? What that means is that command is going to take advantage of that, and take advantage of, as Herr says, a press whose tradition of objectivity and fairness, not to mention self-interest, saw that all of the official story got space. It was inevitable that once the media took the diversions seriously enough to report them, they also legitimized them on 2/14. So again, if you show up and you report the story as it's being shown to you, then you will make it legitimate. And just by showing it, right? You can say, oh, I didn't do anything. All I did was report. I just, I was an objective reporter. It's like, you reported this, not that, or that, or that. This was given airtime in a particular place. This was not. This threatened advertisers. This story threatened advertisers. They threatened to withdraw. This story did not. There are all kinds of reasons why this particular story got launched and got put up, and these stories did not. Okay. So there's no way that what you're getting is somehow an objective truth. It's a truth. It's a version. It's a vision, I guess, is the best we can say, is that it's a vision. So as the press reported the story, it makes the story, right? It isn't a matter of blaming reporters, and I'm not doing that, but of stepping back and looking and seeing it, like how the whole system operates, because it's still pretty much operating this way. And it's just as, we can perhaps more nakedly see the interest groups, although it was pretty obvious then too. I mean, it wasn't as though this was some shocking surprise. That the society, in this case America, wants its story told, and its story will support its overall cultural narrative, which is whiteness, liberalism, global democracy and benevolence, freeing the planet from communism, heteronormativity, women are second class, all that stuff. Any person who is white is better than any person of color, all of those things. That story is supported by the corporations who are going to benefit from it, who are run by white people, white men particularly. And they in turn hire people to get that story. But of course it's objectively, so that a democratic people can come to the conclusion that what they hear from the news is capital R real. Like this is, oh yeah, that's got to be capital R real. So the power for us in Herr's narrative is, as he says, this was all part of a process which everyone I know came grudgingly to think of as routine, and I was free of it on 2/15. Okay, so this is the most important thing about this kind of reporting, and the reporting of really all of the new journalists, which is that the new journalist is not beholden to anybody but his or her own narrative preference, which there is one. It's not as though there isn't. It's not as though this person is somehow, you know, an angelic figure, but they do not, if they're prepared to take a vow of poverty, basically, they do not have to make nice for General Electric, which is saying a lot. Okay, what can we take away from this? What do we have for the contestants, Johnny, as they used to say? Okay, so I'll give you a chance to, rather than read these to you, I'll give you a chance to write this stuff down. You can write the first one down. I'll move myself out of the way of the second one. Okay, I'll give you a chance to just pause that and write those down. Okay, let me just sort of say a word about these two. The thing about, or these notes as well, the thing about these narratives is that people assume that because they're hearing a good story, it must be the real story. And there's no reason to believe that whatsoever, but it's very common. To understand what the media are doing, and not the media is, but the media are, right? Because the media are a plural. That is, it's television and or whatever we call television these days, networks, and it's print and it's digital and it's Instagram and when we do and it's Facebook and okay, and all that's media, and it's also Hollywood and so on. To understand what the media are doing, you must first understand these narrative assumptions. In other words, if you're going to understand the Vietnam War, what you partly have to do is understand the culture that produced it, not the Vietnamese, but the Americans, because the Americans, after all, brought the war to Vietnam. They're like, here, have our war, you know. What are the various stories that we could be hearing? Well, I've indicated a few of them to you, and I will try to bring some of those into the discussion, because we're going to use Herr to give us more background so that we can then approach the women's story, the African American story, the story by the Vietnamese, story by Vietnamese women, you know, and so on. Sorry, my microphone's in the way here. The forces in power decide what stories suit them. And yeah, okay. So basically, remember that when you're hearing a story, somebody wants you to hear it. And no story is free of no matter what somebody says, even if the person's the lowliest blogger, they are doing it for some reason. You know, they're putting it out and they'll say, because I want to get the truth out. It's like, okay, you want to get the truth out, or is it for your ego? You know, which it may very well be. It's like, at least just whatever it is, admit to it. You know, just don't say, oh, I'm doing this for the good of all mankind or personkind or humankind or whatever. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm going to have a hard time accepting that.